The tropics are active, but no imminent threat to the United States, which is exactly where we want to be in the busy month of September. But how long will these storms just remain out at sea? Our Tracking the Tropics team live with the latest plus to answer your questions in a meteorologist Q&A here from your hurricane headquarters. Hey there, folks. JB Buno here with you live. Great to have back on the program from WSAV, our sister station. Scott Roberts, meteorologist, joining us there on the right side of your screen. Our Tracking the Tropics fans, of course, know Scott well from his work there in Georgia. Also standing by is Tracking the Tropics meteorologist Amanda Holly with the latest on a lot of activity here in the tropics. We're going to get to your questions and comments in a meteorologist Q&A. Really going to be looking for hashtag Hey Scott and of course hashtag Hey Amanda. If you use one of those hashtags, we can feature your comment here live in this Wednesday edition of Tracking the Tropics. For the very latest, let's send things over to Tracking the Tropics meteorologist Amanda Holly here. Quite busy there behind you, Amanda.
Yeah, but you said it well, JB. You know, all of this activity in the Atlantic, it's a lot to look at, but thankfully nothing is threatening the United States at this time, but there is plenty going on. We've been talking about Hurricane Sam for quite some time. It is still a very powerful major Category 4 hurricane. We're tracking a couple of tropical waves, one newly formed Tropical Depression 20 as of this morning, and we're still holding on to the remnants of Peter, which has a low chance of developing. I want to walk you through each and every one of these storms to give you an idea of where each one is going, because nothing's threatening the United States at the moment, but of course it's still in hurricane season, and we will be tracking them as they kind of inch closer to the United States. This is Hurricane Sam. It is a beautiful hurricane, and I use that word because it is not over land at this point, and it is not threatening land right now. You can see the satellite pattern looks really nice. We've got a pretty clear eye. It has been a very powerful hurricane for the past several days. It's gone through some intensity fluctuations, downgraded a little bit there, and increased in intensity. Maximum winds at this point are at 130 miles per hour. It's moving northwest at 9 miles per hour. So you can see these are the windward islands. Here's Puerto Rico just behind me, and you can see it's moving off to the northwest, so it's going to miss the Caribbean islands. And actually, we're going to see a turn to more toward the north as we get into the next couple of days. But it is forecast to stay a very powerful hurricane with just slight fluctuations in the intensity, but staying east of the United States. Bermuda may see some fringe impacts, especially in the terms of some high surf, some rip currents, and that will be the same for the east coast of the United States, but no direct impacts are expected. So that's good news. We're going to continue to watch it as it recurves back out into the Atlantic. Let's talk about Tropical Depression 20. This formed earlier today. This was a tropical wave that came off the coast of Africa a couple of days ago. In fact, we've been watching two tropical waves come off the coast of Africa. This is the first one, deemed Invest 91L. This is Invest 90L, but was upgraded to a tropical depression at 11. Maximum winds are at 35 miles per hour. It moves west-northwest at 14 for now. It's likely going to get its act together over the next 24 to 36 hours and will likely become our next named storm on the list, which is getting very short at this point. We've gone through plenty of names so far, with this being our 20th storm of the season. It would be the 20th named storm if we get a name. And it is forecast. The National Hurricane Center thinks it'll become a tropical storm as we head into the next 24 hours, potentially becoming a hurricane as we get into toward the weekend and early weekend there. But you can see the path here. Now there are some differences in the models on where exactly Tropical Depression 20 is going to go. However, I do think it's going to stay far enough out into the Atlantic that we're not going to see any impacts here in the United States. Anytime you see a storm curving that far north that quickly before it reaches the Caribbean, usually that is what we call a fish storm. So good news there. But of course, we're going to continue to keep an eye on it. Now, Invest 91L, the tropical wave that is just next to Tropical Depression 20, is this area right here. It has a 30% chance of developing over the next 2 and 5 days. We could see some slow development as this tropical wave continues off to the west, and I'm going to be watching that one very closely here because some models actually bring some of that moisture into the Caribbean. And I actually want to bring in WSAV's Scott Roberts right now because I want to get your opinion on this. Some of the longer range models do actually end up bringing this moisture into the Caribbean, which as we move into October, that's kind of where we start to look for tropical development.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as the placement of this invest in the wake, more or less, of Hurricane Sam, which has been very powerful, the water is going to be churned up a little bit cooler at the surface. So this storm is going to have a harder time to develop into something, and that would favor that more westward track toward the Caribbean, where it would get into an environment that would be a little bit more favorable for development. The new tropical depression 20 a little bit further to the east, that one has a better environment to strengthen a little bit more quickly into that hurricane strength, and that would favor that turn to the north much faster than this invest. So I think this invest is something for us to at least worthwhile to keep an eye on until we really see what it's able to do. And once it's in that environment that's a little bit more conducive.
It will be interesting to watch for sure. And actually, Invest 90L, which is now Tropical Depression 20, kind of stole Invest 91L's thunder a little bit. They both looked like robust tropical waves the past couple of days. They both had a high chance of developing, but the tropical wave that just came off the coast of Africa obviously beat this one to the punch. But yes, as Scott said, we're going to watch this one potentially to see if it continues on a path farther west than Sam and what will likely be Victor will take. This is the remnants of Peter. 10% chance of developing. It's north of Bermuda at this point. We're not really concerned about that one. Very low chance. We'll watch it. We'll let you know if it gets named, but it's not going to threaten the United States. These are the forecast models for Invest 91L. Scott just talked about it. I just talked about it. There's a little bit of uncertainty on whether it will develop or not and on where it will go. That's the forecast models that we have so far. So certainly something to keep an eye on, but nothing threatening at this point. We've got plenty of time to watch it. Let's talk about these tropical names for just a second. We have gone through 19 of them, and we've actually had several hurricanes. We've had 4 major hurricanes so far, obviously Sam being the current major Category 4 storm. And we only have Victor and Wanda left. Obviously, we went through the names last year, and we went to the Greek alphabet. That's not going to happen this year. We're likely going to check these 2 names off the list with only 2 months, with 2 months left of hurricane season to go. We've got October and all of November to get through before hurricane season kind of really starts to die down. So we're likely going to check those 2 names off the list. And we're going to go into a supplemental list of names. So this is going to be used from now on in lieu of the Greek alphabet. And this was determined because some of the Greek letters actually were a little bit confusing if they were named at the same time. Last year we had iota and we had eta, and they just got a little bit confusing. So if we have another active season like that last year, that won't happen this year. This is the supplemental list of names that we will go to. The first couple on the list are Adria and Braylon and Caridad. Those are the first 3. And we'll likely get to them because, again, 2 months left of hurricane season to go. As we head into October, Scott and JB, this is where we start to look. We start to, cut off the tropical waves coming off the coast of Africa, and then we watch the moisture making its way into the Caribbean. And then we'll see some cold fronts come through. Those storms can develop off of those cold fronts as well. But thankfully, nothing threatening the United States right now.
Tracking the tropics, meteorologist Amanda Holly here with the latest and a whole lot going on here in an active Atlantic here, folks. Let's get now to our meteorologist Q&A. Let's activate it here on the bottom of our screen here. Great to have WSAV's Scott Roberts here joining us, everybody, on Tracking the Tropics. Amanda's going to be walking back over here and joining us here in your hurricane headquarters to continue taking some questions here. First and foremost, I want to let some of our viewers here know that I see that there are a lot of questions coming in pertaining to the news of the day. I will be, of course, trying to keep you updated on my social media platforms on the news of the day, but we're going to be here as far as taking your questions about the tropics, about what's going on right now in the Atlantic, and about where we are right now in the 2021 hurricane season. So how this works: if you use hashtag HeyScott, hashtag HeyJB, or of course hashtag HeyAmanda, we can feature your comments here on screen. But Scott, let me just bring you in here. What do you think of where we are right now? We talk about this all the time as far as September being such a busy month in hurricane season, and we so many previous hurricane seasons we said, man, wouldn't it just be great if so many of these systems just stayed out and remained out at sea? And here we are, we're getting our wish here, and it's almost like, can you believe it, that our prayers have finally been answered here as far as all these storms kind of staying out in the Atlantic, at least for right now?
Yeah, it's definitely a nice change from where we have been earlier in the season, of course, with Louisiana getting hit, pretty badly over the past couple of years. But as far as the past couple of weeks and what we're dealing with right now, the storms favoring that quick turn to the north into the Atlantic, staying away from land, it's definitely a good sign of things. But it's definitely a situation with how active the season overall has been with development. We definitely don't want to let our guard down, because for any one location, it just takes one storm for it to be a bad hurricane season. Even when things are pretty quiet, you can have that one storm that could really be devastating. Looking back at previous seasons, 1992 with Hurricane Andrew, that was in August, and of course was a Category 5 storm that hit South Florida. So that was an overall quiet season, but definitely it was anything but quiet for South Florida.
Amanda, this is exactly where we want to be.
Right now, peak of hurricane season, absolutely. Every single storm out in the Atlantic, we can't complain about that. But yeah, we have had, kind of an active season to start. There's been a little bit of a lull in the activity for the United States, but we've got 2 months left to go. And as Scott said, it only takes one storm for one particular area to make it a bad area, to make it a bad season. Tampa Bay in particular, we've been kind of on the fringe effects earlier this year. We had Fred, we had, the fringe effects of Elsa as well, but nothing direct. So that's been kind of lucky for us. But, October is particularly dangerous, if you will, for Florida in particular, because we have those cold fronts come through. And if a hurricane gets into the Gulf of Mexico and you see a cold front coming down, that can kind of pull it in our direction. So we're not out of the woods just yet, but certainly quiet for the United States at the moment.
I want everybody here to find the most nearby piece of wood and knock on it here, because we always talk about Florida here on Tracking the Tropics. Stephanie Daniels, #HeyJB. It seems that Florida has been getting lucky lately. I think we have a bubble around us. And again, everybody knock on wood. You got it, Amanda?
I got
Scott, you got some wood nearby that you can knock on here. Florida, so far, so good here as far as the 2021 hurricane season.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet. I mean, the last time there was any major issues for Florida itself that I can recall was Hurricane Michael back in 2018, which was, of course, a Category 5 storm, and certainly not what you want to see. But when you do have an active season that's like what we've had the past couple of years, that just kind of increases the odds of something impacting somewhere along any of the coast for Florida, for Southeast Georgia and South Carolina. My coverage area just increases those chances. The more storms, you're bound to get something to hit land somewhere, anywhere, anytime.
How about this question here just coming in from Christopher here, #HeyAmanda. Any long-term forecast outlook? Hopefully some cooler temperatures on the way in both Florida and Georgia, where Scott is joining us from.
Yeah, if we're cooler here, obviously Scott's bound to be cooler there in Savannah, Georgia. Long-term forecast outlooks looks like we could be in store for a very mild, normal winter with the potential for La Nina to develop. It hasn't quite developed just yet, but we're in what we call a La Nina watch. The conditions are trying to develop. We're watching it for now. But actually, right now, it feels really nice outside. Not necessarily cooler. It's a little early in the season for that. But, eventually as we get into, especially later in October and November, we'll start to see those more frequent cold fronts coming in, giving us some splashes of cooler temperatures.
Scott, cooler temps would be nice this time of year, right? This fall is right here.
Yeah, it's here. The past few days, it's been feeling pretty nice here in Georgia. We had a pretty strong cold front that really cleared things out. We had below average temperatures, but now we're getting to the swing of things where ahead of the fronts, we get pretty warm and humid, thunderstorms, all that kind of activity. We get the front coming through, and then that fall weather comes in, and they're just going to become more and more frequent. So that's something that a lot of people look forward to this time of the year around these parts of the country, because of just how humid and hot it becomes with all that. Even though we're at the coast with the sea breeze, that still gets pretty sticky for us.
We live for the brief moments of the less humid air.
We do. It's certainly nice. You walk outside and it's just, you just go, it just feels good, right? It also feels good to see that we don't have an active imminent threat here in the United States, because Amanda just brought up here in the center of your screen here, folks, the tropical climatology here as far as the month-to-month outlook here for of course, the hurricane season here. And you can see here that September and even into October, quite busy, and we have had a lot of tropical activity to report on, but nothing close to the United States as of the very end here, this final Tracking the Tropics episode here of September. But we've been, of course, racing through the alphabet here, and Jabbar Hassan here, #HeyJB, how does the supplemental list work? And this is now very, very new, so I'll bring Scott and Amanda up here. This is no more alphas and betas and zetas and iotas, all the Greek alphabet haters out there. This is now a big change.
Yeah, it definitely is a big change, and I think it's a change that probably had to happen because, of course, we didn't anticipate ever going as far into the Greek alphabet as we did last year. In 2005, we used the first few names on that list, but last year, of course, we just started blowing right through that, and it did get confusing, even for us as meteorologists, when you have zeta, theta, and everything that ends with an all at once. It's hard to keep track ourselves of what the storms are. So now with the new list, it's a secondary list of names that the World Meteorological Organization has created, and we'll go through that name list just like a normal list of hurricane names. But then when something happens, say you end up with a Cat 4 or 5 storm that is especially deadly, dangerous, costly, they'll just take that name off the list and replace it with a new name similar to regular rotating list of names that we use every 6 years, except that I believe this name list is going to be pretty much the same, except for some names getting taken out of it and added on in those extreme situations.
The idea is that we don't have to use this list of names very often. We hope that we don't. We hope that it doesn't have to come out every year. It's kind of rare for us to have to go into a secondary list of names 2 consecutive years in a row. And not to mention, if last year we had several awful storms that were the Greek letters. And how do we go about that, right? Do we expire the Greek letter and then replace it with what? Do we not use it ever again and just, go to the next one? So there was kind of some confusion there. And I think that this was the best way to kind of go about it. They are very distinct names, which I think is good as well. Not confusing when we have multiple going at once.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier to say something like Heath rather than Iota or Zeta, but of course, there were people that did enjoy getting into the Greek alphabet here. Again, Amanda Holly, Scott Roberts, JB Buno here with you live on Tracking the Tropics here. This is a last call for your hashtag Hey Scott, hashtag Hey Amanda, or hashtag Hey JB comments in the Facebook Live comment section. If you use a hashtag, we can animate them here on screen. And a great one just coming in from WGNO's Facebook page. Yeah, we're live on a lot of different Facebook pages here simultaneously. And Henry Sparks asking, hashtag Hey JB, question. The other storm in front of TD20 was at 80% yesterday. Did TD20 eat the other storm here? And this is a great question here from Henry. So I'll bring up again Amanda and Scott here. Amanda, what do we say for Henry's comment?
Well, it's not unusual when we have 2 tropical waves very close to each other for one to kind of take the precedence, take the stage, if you will. And like Scott said earlier at the beginning of the stream, we're likely going to see Tropical Depression 20 develop a little bit quicker. It's going to recurve off to the north a little bit faster, leaving what's to the west of the L that you see there. That's Tropical Depression 20, but the shower and thunderstorm, that cloud activity that you see to the west of it, that's Invest 91L. Yes, they both had a high chance of developing. Tropical Depression 20 kind of took the stage a little bit sooner. This one will probably take a little bit longer for it to get its act together, if it ever will.
And that's probably a good thing overall to have one less storm to worry about, except I think like what we talked about a little earlier, that little tropical wave 91L there does have that better chance of making its way a little bit more westward, but it is going to be a much weaker area of low pressure as it does make its way westward. So that could help to lower the chances overall down the road for it to be becoming a major concern for us. So we can thank Tropical Depression 20 and Sam for using up some of that energy in the neighborhood for that situation for 91L.
How about this one that just came in here a moment ago? It comes from Fanny in our comment section here. It might be Fanny or Fani. Hashtag KJB, hashtag Hey Amanda. How do you figure out the hurricane name? So if I wanted there to be a hurricane JB, I don't think that they would actually do the initials, but if I wanted a hurricane JB, if somebody wanted a storm, not that you would ever want a storm named after you, or maybe you do, I'm not sure, but how do you figure out the hurricane names, Amanda Holly?
So the World Meteorological Organization takes the stage for this. They figure out the entire list of names. As Scott said earlier, we actually repeat each list every 6 years. So we have 6 lists of names and we continuously use them. That's why, you've probably seen a Claudette before, maybe a Grace before. But if that storm is deadly or dangerous and very impactful to a certain area where it made landfall, we will retire that that particular name. Then the World Meteorological Organization will decide on a new name to replace that letter. So obviously it would start with the same letter and just kind of slide into that little placeholder.
Yeah, and as far as the names that are chosen for the list, that is set by the World Meteorological Organization. It's each basin across the world has its own lists that they use, and the names that they choose for each of those lists are representative of the people, the cultures around that basin. So that's why we see a lot of Spanish, French names, and of course English names here in the Atlantic.
How about this? Maybe we'll see a final good one come in here. But let's take this one from Jenna Lee, #AJB. Do they ever reuse names, even if it is years later?
Yes. The answer to that question is yep. If it was a tropical storm that came through, brought some wind, brought some rain, you will absolutely see that name again 6 years down the line when that list of names is used again.
Yeah, pretty much until there's a reason to take it off, it's going to stay on the list.
So we won't ever see a Hurricane Michael again. We won't see an Ida likely again that we obviously saw earlier this year with Louisiana. So those are the types of storms that we retire. The Katrinas, we'll never see that again. But prior to that storm hitting New Orleans, we had seen Katrinas before.
Before we let you go, WSAV meteorologist Scott Roberts joining us, everybody, from WSAV. Floor is yours. What do you think of the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season? What are you going to be monitoring here in the weeks and months ahead?
Well, first, we're going to keep an eye on everything that's developing out there because, we're a coastal community here in Southeast Georgia and the low country of South Carolina. So every storm that's out there is something that's worthwhile to keep an eye on, just like for you guys down in Florida. And as far as the season 2021, overall things locally have been relatively quiet. We've had some close calls with stuff brushing up along the coast, interacting with the Gulf Stream, but no direct impacts. But, just like what we talked about earlier, it only takes one storm for it to be a really bad season locally. So we're definitely going to keep our guard up, but it's not a season that we necessarily want to see after coming off the heels of 2020 being the busiest on record ever. And this one is going to probably challenge that. So definitely it's something that for everyone around the country, around the coastal areas of the country, along the whole East Coast and the Gulf Coast, for everyone to definitely keep an eye on everything that develops, especially now that we are getting into closer to October, where that development region shifts a little bit closer to us, to the Gulf of Mexico and just offshore in the Atlantic coast.
Our featured guest meteorologist, WSAV's Scott Roberts, joining us here, everybody, on Tracking the Tropics. He's been on with us here before. Our super fans know him and, of course, know us. Amanda Holly, JB Buno here with you. And we appreciate all of the comments that we got with #HeyScott, #HeyAmanda, #HeyJB. I know that there's been a lot of folks here in our Facebook Live comment section clamoring for more information on the news of today, what's been going on here in the Tampa Bay area. We are very, very actively, of course, working the phones, working to provide you with updates on that story, and I'll try to present you with some more here on my social media accounts here in the next several minutes. Perhaps we'll see exactly what transpires. But again, I'd really like to thank Scott Roberts and Amanda Holly for joining us here, everybody, with the latest on the tropics here. Busy, but no imminent threat, which is, of course, the good news here as far as where we are in the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. For folks asking, Tracking the Tropics is live every Wednesday during hurricane season at 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central. And of course, we also are live with episodes when we do need to keep you up to speed on a storm that is developing and a storm that could have, of course, an impact here on us in the United States. So we're always on standby, around the clock, 24/7 during hurricane season to keep you posted on what is going on in the tropics. But our regular Wednesday episodes are where you can really ask questions and we can have meteorological conversations here with the experts like Amanda and Scott, and we look forward to having you next Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central, or perhaps sooner if there's something we need to tell you about, and we'll of course have an additional episode if we do. But this is likely the last episode of September, and if that's the case, from Scott, Amanda, I'm JB, folks, we'll see you in October.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.